James, thank you so much for coming on today. The topic we want to talk about today is massively under-recognised, but honestly super important. So I want to start with you, just on a bit about your background and what it is you kind of do now.
Yes, so I guess this journey started with 2 neurophysios that I met, and we developed a sleep system to manage the posture of patients with catastrophic brain injuries or people in the rehab centres they were working in, to try and help make them more comfortable, preserve body shape, and also try and avoid pressure injuries, which is obviously, as you know, a huge problem. And kind of going on that journey, it became really clear that in healthcare there is zero education in and around the positioning of a patient. And so what's been so interesting in my own personal journey, I guess it just, arguably say I think about things, is that I remember how my grandmother told me to sit and my school teachers, and I know if I was a Buckingham Palace soldier how to stand, but there's never really been any consideration of the same thing when we're in bed, yet gravity is 24/7. So it just kind of made sense to me that if this is so well recognised, even though there's very limited evidence on posture, no one's had their spines tested for 50, 60, 70 years. So there'll never be meaningful data that can absolutely bond or prove the posture's good or bad or worth thinking about or not. But the point is that so many people do recognise that it's important. So why not try it? There's kind of nothing to lose. And so the journey started there, really, just positioning patients that were in all sorts of horrendous pain. And it came clear that if you sleep and you have a spine, then actually this is a universal intervention. And the best way of getting that noise made for those patients with no capacity, where this hasn't been considered ever before, is by making it clear with athletes, with big voices like yourself, making a noise that goes, okay, how is your own sleep? How can we provide you with actionable ways of improving it? And if we do, then you'll probably listen to what we've got to say. And that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah, no, I think I was going back. I was mentioning you before. We didn't have one single minute of sleep posture training, not even in med school, but also after, in medical school or after, my foundation years or anything. So,
and what's the number one thing a human does in their life?
Sleep. Yeah. I mean, we know a bit about sleep hygiene and that stuff, which has been covered extensively.
Correct.
But you mentioned earlier about how what was the main trigger to get you really heavily involved in this? Because I think that's important to know.
So I kind of, when I was sort of sold on the idea of developing this medical device and then kind of fell in love with what these chaps were doing, the thing was always around pressure. That's all people talk about in healthcare is being susceptible to a pressure injury, vulnerable adults that are staying in the same position for long periods of time, and the principle of pressure relief. But what I also was noticing was there was a real correlation between patients that had really high tones of very tense muscles that were, involuntary movements, so patients that kind of couldn't control that tension, that was then changing their body shape. It felt like they just looked so uncomfortable. And the way that the sleep system works is very simple, very similar to the way swaddling a baby would work. Whenever you've got a crying baby, you swaddle them, and that input, that sort of security blanket that says, I'm safe where I am, soothes the baby. So then the opposite of that has to be sleeping on top of a tree in the garden and the wind blowing, which if your bed's soft and you've had you have compromised brain, you've had an injury or you've had a stroke or you've got some god-awful condition, then you need to know where you are in space. And seeing that at first hand with the patients we work with, when tone is so extreme, massive movements and really strong muscles, it really was a phenomenal education in therefore being able to do the same thing with able-bodied people. If you have a spine in your sleep, this is relevant to everyone, right? That has to be.
Yeah. And what's the tragedy? Because obviously we started with patients, right, who've got massive brain injuries, but making that transition to able-bodied people, because the effect's just as extreme. Because sometimes if you got like a person that has a stroke, for example, and you give them intervention of with a mattress or sleep positioning. That in some ways might be slightly easier to measure, right? Because they're in a clinical environment. But with a person,
we've made this really simple because the sleep industry, which I guess I'm in, has become so complicated, so full of myths and magical, perfect tablets that are going to give you the perfect orthopedic therapeutic night's sleep. That as a young doctor with 2 children. I think you said before you've got 2 kids.
Yeah.
So how's your sleep? I would imagine it's pretty terrible, not necessarily because you're a poor sleeper, but your current situation is such that, you know, you've got a busy job, you do a podcast, you've got 2 young kids. There's lots of external factors that are going to impact your sleep that you can't control, even if you've watched every sleep hygiene video on earth. So there's very actionable, very transactional things about sleep posture, which makes it so exciting. Do you wake up less? So how is your sleep disturbance? Because that's the number one cause of poor sleep.
Okay.
So if you wake up every hour and you think you're going to need, you need the bathroom, it's very common with adults. We have this absolute fear and anxiety around wetting the bed as an adult. So every time you wake up, and my wife does it all the time, she has to go to the bathroom. Before she goes to sleep, there's a routine that includes a bathroom stop. And if she doesn't do that routine, she isn't going to sleep until she's done it. And we've all had that moment where it's, do I go to the bathroom or will I fall back to sleep?
Yeah.
And my point is, very often we challenge the P, forgive the phrase, because a person doesn't suddenly have kidney problems and they're not running to the bathroom through the day. When they're going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, they're not putting out fires, forgive the intrusion. So actually, did they need the bathroom or did they just wake up because they were uncomfortable? And I suspect that it's the latter. So the metrics are not, did you get 8 hours? Because many people get 8 hours and feel exhausted or wake up feeling in pain, stiff or dead arms, tingly fingers. There's a million things that sort of, don't match with 8 hours being an optimal night's sleep. But if you wake up in less pain and you feel more rested, and you woke up less in the night, so you had less disturbance, versus yesterday. So no such thing as the perfect night. I don't have one either. Last night, you can see I'm coming out with the other end of a cold. I've driven here early morning. So last night I didn't have a great sleep. It was nothing to do with my sleep posture. I don't have neck pain. I don't have back pain. But, external factors cause that. So it's something that's very transactional, that has a direct linear relationship between what happens when you fall asleep and what happens when you wake asleep. And the research now has proven that falling asleep in a provocative posture is likely to increase your waking symptoms.
So provocative posture, So what is sleep posture? Because a lot of people, including me, don't think at all about our sleep posture. We think during the day I'm hunching, but at night time it's like, okay, I'm in bed, right, laying down.
Well, you know what? We'll use daytime posture as the easy metaphor. Yeah. So if I was to say to you, and you're a doctor, but if I was to ask any of your audience, they'd be able to do the same thing. If I say to you, please show me how to sit properly with good posture, just like your granny told you when you were a kid, and you can show me.
You're making me
absolutely.
I've got bad posture, but
okay, but you get the point, right? So we all know that straight back, knees are bent, feet flat on the floor. So there's an alignment between shoulders all the way to feet.
Yeah.
And if I was to ask you to stand like a Buckingham Palace soldier, you know how to stand. Most people who sleep, and I suspect you're the same because I saw you cross a leg, and I won't tell anyone. It's our little secret with this audience, is that you always cross one leg over the other, never the other leg.
That's true.
And actually, you probably find it a bit weird and uncomfortable crossing the other leg, which tells me that you sleep on the same one side every night when you fall asleep.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, think about it, I love side on my side.
Which side?
On my left.
Every night the same?
Pretty much.
Yeah, and then you crossed your right leg over your left, didn't you, just before?
Yeah, so it's kind of like I'm like this.
So if you agree this position is a good seating posture, then what you're doing is the same as you would do when you crossed your legs. So when you brought that right leg over the other, like so originally you had this lovely space between your shoulder and your ear.
Yep.
The second that top leg comes over, you have a rotation at hip. That is the provocative posture. And that rotation brings the shoulder forward. So now your distance is ear to bed. You've brought your body weight and twisted over the spine. And now you're laying there. And I think you told me you sleep on memory foam, which is soft. So if you've ever been, at the back of a plane and you've fallen asleep and you've woken up with terrible neck pain, or, back of a car watching TV, whatever, you didn't wake up because of the pain. Like the pain, otherwise you would have prevented it. You would have woken up straight away as it started to tingle. So we wake up with dead arms and tingly fingers. What it's proving to us that you might not necessarily wake up because of pain, but once you are awake, it's going to be there for the day. So if pain symptoms are always worse in the morning, then look at the position you fall asleep in. Sleep posture is very simple. Consider it a daytime posture, standing straight, sitting straight. When you lie, your spine should be straight. You can only control the first position you fall asleep in, right?
Okay, so let's say, so anyone listening, say if they're at home right now or before they sleep, how can they check to see if their posture is any good before they sleep? What are the key kind of points?
There's two. Never sleep on your stomach.
Okay.
It should be illegal. Doctors should be
I don't know,
protesting this.
Sometimes I sleep in my stomach because it's comfortable, right?
It's right. Well, so there's the word. So comfortable. People think it's comfortable because they fall asleep really quickly. That's not the same thing. Many people say that they can only fall asleep on their stomach, and in spite of that, wake up with terrible pain and can't change. And we say to them, every year, 213 million women become pregnant. And if they were all stomach sleepers, you've just told them to sleep on their left side. Correct, doctor?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So it's very possible. But what sleep posture is also an association of sleep. So you find it comfortable. You always lie on your left side. You always cross one leg over the other. It's all comfortable because your body's learned to tolerate the way that you sort of use it, right? So you always do the same moves. It matters less in the day because the second you become uncomfortable, pain tells you you're conscious, so you move. You and I in this call will have a little slouch. It'll be lovely. And now everyone like a little slump. It's gorgeous. But if you're exhausted, like you said you are, because you've got 2 young kids and you work really hard, you fall asleep really quickly. It feels comfortable because it's familiar. The brain goes, oh, I remember this position. It's sleepy time, hurrah. But if you always wake up through the night or in pain, what went wrong? Like, what do we put down? We put it down to like gardening, or we had a really heavy week last week, or we lifted something up. We don't put it down to that we sleep like a twisted pretzel for 26 years of our lives.
Okay, so stomach sleeping is a no-no. What can they do? So sleep in the stomach. Okay, if you sleep in your stomach, bad.
But okay, so if we go back to those 2 daytime postures, if I go back to that seated posture, all I need to do, if I take that exact same position and now put myself on the bed, gravity's now pulling in a different way. So it's pulling from the top leg down to the bottom leg, yeah? So if I stick an old pillow between my knees and ankles, anything from the supermarket, it doesn't have to be expensive. That's the other beauty of sleep posture. You don't really have to do anything other than not fall asleep like a wally. That's the clinical message of today's podcast, right? Yeah. So fill that space so the top leg's supported, that leg doesn't roll over like it normally does, because that's your preferred position.
Okay.
Yeah, that's thing 1. Thing 2 is that the pillow has to fill that space. The neck is the most delicate part of the spine, yet we all sleep on the same size pillow. If you and your wife are on the same size pillow as your children, are you all wearing the same size shoes?
No one knows.
Because that would be utter, like if you came home with a pair of shoes for your missus that were your size, brand new Gucci whatevers, she'd think you were mental. But if you went to the supermarket and bought 2 pillows, she'd be like, oh, I love the new pillow, thank you very much. You either stand on something or you lie on something. That's generally what we tend to do on planet Earth, and we're spending the majority of our lives lying on something that either doesn't support us, which is essentially the second part of sleep posture. We can control the positions we fall asleep in. We make them neutral, on your back, on your side, but with the spine nice and straight. And then it's all around the surface. So if you're sleeping on, in the ocean on a lilo, you have to engage your core. You and I are nice and comfortable, and we can slouch, we can do these different positions because we've accepted our base of support. If I had no back, if this was a bar stool, my core would have to be engaged, right? Because I'm now less stable. So the same is true when you're asleep. If you move, then presumably your muscles have to engage, otherwise you just fall off the bed, right?
Yeah, I want to think so. I mean, are there any studies out there to show, because obviously we control our posture when we fall asleep, but what about when we're sleeping? It's all subconscious, right?
Exactly right.
If we fall asleep in a certain position, do we stay in a better position overnight? Or
so the principle is, the research that's currently out there states that lying in a provocative posture will increase your symptoms. There's not much that says not lying in a posture won't, as in it's very difficult to prove that. But with everybody that we've ever worked with that's come to us as a stomach sleeper, or as a side lier with both legs on the bed, or as a back lier with 15 pillows, or anything that kind of is really a world away from a neutral starting point, the body gets used to what we do. So your body's used to crossing one leg, and at such a young age, and we are able to suddenly stop being able to cross legs. You look like a fit, healthy guy, but yet, so imagine 20, 30 years time, the challenge of crossing a leg, or trying to lie on your right side if you've always fallen asleep on your left side. So it's a life's work posture, and we respect it so deeply in daytime. You can sue your boss if you don't have an ergonomic workstation provision, but you only work for 13 years, you sleep for 26, and sleep is the only time where you don't load your spine. You can have a really good support system. And I suppose what I learned in the NHS was that if you bring the bed to the patient, rather than allowing the patient to be sunk into the bed by gravity, then arguably they'll have a better posture. They can feel more support, much like swaddling a baby, which makes this the most simple intervention in global health. If you fall asleep in a neutral position on a surface that supports you properly, you're less likely to wake up in pain. And the comorbidity of poor sleep, which the number one reason for poor sleep is disturbance, and the comorbidity of pain, chronic pain being 1.78 billion people.
It's really interesting because one thing that's massive and that I've been looking to help patients with all the time is things like chronic fatigue syndrome, or it's like ME, or as it's called now, or fibromyalgia. And so I'm always looking at, because obviously there's no treatment or cure for it at the moment. So I'm always looking at thinking, what can we do other than pain, right? Pain medication. And I've never thought once about sleep posture, But this changed, because essentially it's blowing my mind. Because what you're saying is that most people are sleeping wrong. The posture is bad.
Not only are they sleeping wrong, they're not comfortable. The challenge is that the industry, like I say, the sleep industry is not regulated, and sleep medicine is not regulated. Which means you can make a claim like you will have seen cooling technology and orthopedic this, and what does any of it mean? It's so confusing. And the most comfy sleep, or blah blah blah, comfort by definition, if you go on the Oxford Dictionary, is ease of physical relaxation, ease of movement. So if you're lying on something that doesn't support you, you're not going to be able to move easily. It's not easy to turn onto a hammock. If you're on a hammock, you can't move around on it. If you're lying on a soft surface, you will be engaged. So it's something that you can control in as much as you fall asleep in an appropriate way. The body starts to get used to the position that you've now changed it to. And it's not around trying to increase that. A lot of the patients that we work with that have fibromyalgia, one of the biggest challenges I think they face is that, like I said, there's no treatment, which also almost comes with lack of validation. It's like, we've got nothing out there for you because it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think...
But that it is, right? You know that... And I suppose fibromyalgia is the perfect example where there's a marriage between pain, mood and sleep, right? And you said to me before, one of the challenges you faced when you started was that it's so prescriptive medicine. It's so like, give me a tablet to stop the pain. But actually, if we know that your symptoms of pain increase in the morning and you sleep in a provocative posture, and we address that, so that tomorrow we don't say, right, you're now going to get 8 hours and you're going to feel $1 million. No, we say you're going to feel less crap than yesterday, because that's reasonable and fair. And if that works, we've just suddenly empowered a person that's been given no tools, whether it's sleep apnea, whether it's chronic fatigue like you described, whether it's pregnant women that just final trimester just have SPD. There's so many causes of poor sleep. Least of all, I see this amazing book that you were talking about before. The comorbidity of both chronic pain and poor sleep is poor mental health. So we all address mental health. Mental health has such a high focus and priority. But actually, if you had less disturbed sleep and woke up feeling a bit more rested than yesterday, whatever your story, because I make a pillow and a mattress. My pillow will not help your mental health. That's so ignorant, right, to discuss and intrude like that. But if you had a better quality of sleep last night than tonight than last night, then in the morning you might just be better equipped to fight. And especially those people that do have fatigue, that are in bed all day but don't sleep, it's so you feel powerless. So when you've suddenly got a tool that's transactional that goes, oh my gosh, my neck doesn't hurt as much today, and actually I didn't have to spend an hour in the shower cricking it, or whatever that it is. A lot of the people that we work with have never been given a single tool other than, like you said, medicine, and more messaging that says, by the way, if you don't get those 8 hours, you're going to die an awful early death.
Okay, right. So we know that sleep position, whether you're a back sleeper or a side sleeper, essentially having a neutral posture all the way from your head down to your feet. So, and then that starts with right size pillow, right? And I told you a couple of weeks ago when we first spoke, I literally have got 20 pillows, and it's always a case of getting a new one, maybe putting two on top of each other.
Correct.
Or maybe putting an arm under one. It's so hard to size a pillow. So what makes a good pillow?
So I think everything that I've done truly is just common sense.
Yep.
So there's two things that we know for sure. One is that the average head weighs 4 to 6 kilos. So even if you've bought a pillow that claims the bounciest bounce since bounce began, if you can squeeze your finger through it, then it's not supporting the weight of your head. And if it doesn't support the weight of your head as a start of a 10, then your head has to sink into the shoulder. You're going to be stretching your ear. One side, as a side sleeper always on your left, you'd always be doing this. You'd never be doing this, right? So thing one is it's got to support that weight. But thing two is that shouldn't be at the price of pressure. So if it was a brick in your shape, it would still burn your ear off. So it has to have, like all parts of the lying equation, what you lie on has to provide enough support that you feel safe and secure and comfortable, by definition, but enough pressure relief that you're not going to be susceptible to an injury. It's a very, very basic requirement. So it's not around going into a shop and giving a pillow a squidge and going, oh, that feels lovely.
That's what I do. Soft as bed, but it sounds like you basically need a pillow that keeps you like this, but obviously on your side.
Yeah.
But that's soft enough and it's not too hard.
Doctor, which is the most delicate part of your spine?
Or your neck, right? So,
right.
And so, okay, that's interesting because I've always gone for the softest pillow.
Sure, because it's comfortable. Because we've been educated on this. The kings in the 1900s lay on horsehair layers of 50 different things, and actually that's been mirrored in modern day sleep industry. Excuse me.
That's okay. So, I've always gone for a soft pillow. But what now? And then recently, memory foam. Right? I know you said memory foam is bad. What about as a pillow? And why is that?
So. Memory foam was designed by NASA. We all know that. That's the big claim, right? That's the big exciting thing, that this super space station place built this amazing material. And it is amazing. Yeah. It was designed for space travel crash safety. Okay. And in space where there's no gravity, you can see that sort of slow return of memory foam being phenomenal. Like that really is how you'd want to have that crash safety in space, I guess. I've never been in space. But in planet Earth where there's gravitational pull, something that deforms and softens under force and time is in a moving lying surface. And if you are, when you've got like a bit of a neck ache and you kind of bring your shoulders up to almost prevent that pain. So if you're lying on something that's always a real effort when you move, or every time you cough, the whole bed changes, then arguably you have to be so engaged, you have to have so much muscle tension. And when we're working in rehab centres, when we're working in hospitals, more often than not, the solution to the pressure relief is actually the cause of the pressure injury, because a patient can't move, because a patient finds it uncomfortable, so the peak pressures become more and more severe over time.
I see. So, pillow-wise, you're saying feather? Because they're quite soft, right? And
I'm saying anything. Okay, so the two starters that cut out most pillows, and I really believe this to be true. I'm happy to be challenged. If pillows are in one size, then we should all be wearing the same one size shoe, or the one size same glasses prescription, or the same clothing size. It's so ludicrous that I would never wear my wife's shoes. She's a 5 and I'm an 11. Yep. Equally, she's 5'4", I'm 6'2". Yep. She lies on her back, I lie on my side. So we have a different size pillow. Obviously, like it's so obvious now I say it, right? If you, your wife, and your 2 young children are on the same size pillow, that's like wearing their mittens and their toddler shoes, and it sounds so ludicrous. But this is a global problem. The Olympians all had the same size beds, cardboard beds and one pillow. The hospitals globally all have one size bed, one size pillow. And every patient's needs are different. Every athlete's needs are different.
Okay. So I think we got the pillow covered. Now, what about the bed itself? Mattress? Because I've got a memory foam one, again, and which I know you're going to say is probably bad. And that's probably for marketing or whatever it was. We've got a memory foam one. And whether it's helping me, to be honest, because we did a sleep consult a couple of weeks ago, and I remember you told me to sit in the middle of the bed and see if there's a dip, and which there was. So when I sat in the middle of the bed, it was an obvious dip, right? Which made me think the middle of my spine is probably not going to be aligned with my pelvis, because that's the heaviest part where I sleep. So is that a problem with memory foam mattresses as well as the pillows?
It's any surface that compresses under force. So because the industry's so hooky, there's so much claim of such nonsense that just can't be proven or possible. Everything that we've done, we've gone and proven. So we've worked with UCLAN's engineering department for years. Yeah. The head engineer there will tell you that Levitex is exponentially better than any foam on the market in terms of its deformation. So it's having this marriage of ability to pressure relieve without deforming. That's the first time that's happened. So we've always tried to solve pressure by making something that relieves pressure. But that doesn't solve support or comfort or stability or proprioceptive feedback.
I see. So structurally, what's the difference between, say, Levitex and memory foam, or even just a traditional spring mattress?
I think it's the perfect marriage between the two. So I think I said to you before, when I started my journey in healthcare, I'd found this systematic review of hospital lying surfaces, and it defined that there wasn't a single grade of foam that satisfied the basic needs of a mattress, which was how much it sinks. So with high resistance foam, conventional foam, it doesn't sink enough. So if you lie on a hard, firm piece of foam, eventually you'll be uncomfortable because of the pressure buildup. But also it required pressure relief, which memory foam's great at, but it doesn't come with the support. So you kind of needed to marry the two because you needed a mattress to be able to, it needed to be easy to turn in. Freedom of movement is a basic requirement of comfort, right? If you can't move and you're stuck in one position for 12 hours, even if you're able-bodied, you're going to be in agony. So what you lie on has to be supportive enough that you can turn, have freedom of movement, turn easily. So the difference essentially is it kind of marries the two, the high resistance and the memory foam, which is what happened before. People would just layer, and you have all these different zonal mattresses that don't really come with much efficacy. So the principle was enough sink that it didn't hurt, and not too much sink that you're lying in a hammock, which you're currently doing. Like you just defined it in terms of how you're falling asleep. Whatever you do, however expensive your pillow is, or whatever your hygiene looks like you described, your hip has to sink into the bed just by virtue of the way the material of the mattress is deformed, right? It's not coming back to life for you anymore.
Talk to me the importance of the lower limbs and what we need to do there, because I don't know the answer because you told me what to do, but I think a lot of people, apart from maybe pregnant women, don't do this.
Well, I think, again, the first hook was that people started buying these knee pillows. If you think about that seated posture, it's the easiest way to always think about. Sit in a good chair, look down, and you'll see between your knees and ankles there's a big gaping space.
Yeah.
So if you just put your hands where your knees are, then actually your feet are going to come together. You now look like a frog. What we're looking for is the same as a daytime posture. So any old pillow between your knees and ankles. So if these are your hips, these are your knees, these are your ankles, then by supporting the knee and the ankle, that leg won't roll over as much, that hip won't internally rotate, because a woman's hips are wider apart than a man's, right? So even if they were neutral, they're kind of not. So you really need to support that leg, but not at the knee. And the same with standing. If you were to stand for 12 hours, you'd be in agony. So how do we stop that tension in the lower spine? We'd bend our knees slightly. And also, we have that arch. So if you're lying on your back, there's an arch between the middle of your back and your bottom. So there's a hole between you and the bed. And like I described before with the patients we serve in hospital, we bring the bed to you, not you to the bed. So if that gaping hole exists, if you slightly tilt your pelvis by putting a pillow underneath your knees, then that spine straightens out, right? Less of that tailbone's sort of sharply there, and that curve no longer exists. So you can release some of that tension.
That's interesting because everything you're saying is, like you said, is almost common sense.
It's only common sense.
It's almost like a straight line as we're sat now, right?
Yeah.
Now, so what you're saying, if someone's going to get a mattress, you have to really try it out, right, to see is it supporting you enough, and is it not sort of compressing or too soft, to cause malalignment. And I think I've tried this in the past, maybe due to social media influence, is sleeping on on the floor or a very thin kind of Japanese kind of. I've tried both. What are your thoughts on that?
I honestly think, and hopefully this demonstrates our real cause. To me, the lying surface is very secondary to the sleep posture, because people who fall asleep comfortably, like you said, you were.
Oh, really? So you think sleep posture is more important than what you're laying on?
100%.
Wow,
because people generally fall asleep really quickly because they're exhausted. Most of the adult population aren't sleeping properly, whether it's the stress of the economy or the global world nightmare that exists. All of these different things. You can't pay your bills. You've got 2 young kids. There's a million reasons. But it's sorry, I've just forgotten my thread.
So you were saying sleep posture is more important than what you're laying on.
Yeah, so you could people will hate my mattress if you lie on your stomach because it won't forgive poor posture. So actually lying on the floor in a neutral position where you have the most even distribution of body weight arguably is better than lying on a soft bed. 100%.
Because when I did it, the only reason I stopped was because it was causing me some hip pain.
Were you lying on your side?
side sleeper, right? So,
But you were lying with both legs on the bed, right?
well, it was just like a thin little sheet out on the floor. So
Yeah, but what I'm saying is to support yourself, to feel more stable in the same way you cross your leg over in the seat.
yeah,
you
exactly
would
the
have
same
done
thing.
that.
Yeah.
So you're sort of pushing body weight and giving it nowhere to go. The best example I saw again literally a week ago. So as I said to you, the best way to make the noise about sleep posture, because it's so undervalued in healthcare, is to make the noise in sport. And we worked with this amazing athlete called Katie March, she's now called Katie Nichols. I met her just before Tokyo. She had stiff right SIJ, knee pain, shoulder and neck from memory. She laid just like you. We call it the applauder position. And she blamed it on the velodrome, 7 hours a day, kind of like this. She's just won. She says she crashed out of Tokyo. She then had a kid. He's now 2 years old. She won the European Championships early on. Then she's just broken the world record twice and won the gold at Paris. Then she's won the Worlds. This is her third Olympics, and she will tell you categorically that she has the best quality sleep of her life, because she sleeps now in a neutral position on a surface that supports and helps maintain that position for longer than before. So that's why I say it's secondary. The idea of the right pillow, the right mattress, and pillow I think is more important. You said yourself, next the most delicate part, right? Do we ever go to an expensive hotel or any hotel and look on the wibbly wobbly woo at anything other than the restaurant, the pictures, the room? Do we ever call and go, listen, your mattress, what is it? Because a third of the time that you're in the hotel, you're going to be on that mattress, and you never asked. You and your partner go to the hotel, not with the swing trunks, because that would be crazy, but with the same pillow.
Yeah. So you sleep. So I mean, you're saying almost that this is crazy, because I've never asked that question once to pay. I mean, we might ask, oh, how do you sleep? And I think, a lot of the time when sleep is bad, we think, okay, sleeping tablet, or are you sleeping? Is your sleep hygiene good? Are you making sure, the standard stuff like no screen time, don't eat too late, these obvious things. But I've never specifically asked, what pillow you're using, what mattress you're using, how's your sleep posture? Do you have neck pain? This kind of stuff, right? But it's something I think we have to ask, because I think it's, it is maybe the missing piece of the puzzle to make them feel better from whatever they're suffering from.
It has to be, because sleep is a crisis currently. There's no question. Sleep deprivation is a crisis. And for us, and hopefully this will really resonate with you, what we know to be true is the people that get the least amount of sleep are informal carers. So people who are looking after mums and dads, or husbands and wives that have unfortunately had some sort of either condition or, an accident or an injury. There are 3 million informal carers, I think, in the UK. And 1 in 3 informal carers is actually an NHS staff worker. So what's so hopeless, or what's so sad to see, is you meet these amazing clinicians in the NHS, doctors, nurses, carers, who not only do these crazy long shifts, are not able to help patients who are really uncomfortable in bed, because there's no real tools. What do you give somebody who's uncomfortable in bed other than, like, say, a painkiller?
Just up there. What it's interesting, because just thinking about it now, what are the NHS or in hospital? What are the beds they use? Because if I remember from memory, they're very soft. Are they?
If you are susceptible to a pressure injury, that is the hierarchy of care. So a patient will go into hospital, and if they're not going to be moving for a bit, you will put them on a moving lying surface or a memory foam lying surface, and both of those are soft. So that means that you can. So when is the rehab window? As a doctor, the ultimate rehab window is straight away, right? You've had a stroke, God forbid, you want to attack that rehabilitation straight away.
Yeah.
And you're putting patients on beds where they can't move, where it increases their tone, and often they can't tell you that they're not comfortable, but look at their tone, and then look at their tone when they are comfortable.
So why is it? I mean, cause it seems crazy to me, because pressure sores happen, and as a doctor, because I've done a rehab placement in my training, and the only time we get involved was when the patient gets a pressure sore and they're so difficult to treat. Yeah. But why are the mattresses like that then? Why is it like a?
I don't know. Maybe I'm hoping you can tell me, because what's the best way to avoid a pressure sore as a doctor? What you've been taught, what's the number one way to avoid a pressure sore?
Don't put pressure on the areas. For example, the most common place for pressure is around the ankles, right, or your heels,
right,
where we commonly see it. But
so how do you stop getting pressure on that heel?
like you said, so take the pressure off that.
Move them.
Yeah, move. Yeah, move. Yeah.
So if you can't move,
Which is what.
how do people get pressure sores on the heels? It doesn't kind of make sense. It's not like heels are so heavy. You get pressure sores generally under the bottom, around the sacrum, and the heels. And most of the ones around the sacrum and the bottom are moisture, which means maybe somebody wasn't cleaned enough, or there wasn't an ability to air out because somebody wasn't on their side. And I know from my own work experience that some of the patients we've worked with have lay on their backs for years and years, like literally years, never been off their bottoms. And we can position them on their side and support them. That's possibly how they slept before the injury. And now they've been forced to lie on their backs or whatever. So I think the point is that the consideration is not the patient's comfort or sleep, but the patient's susceptibility to a pressure injury, because we can obviously sue the care provider if we get a pressure sore because we weren't on a pressure relieving device. But like I told you, when we made a device during Corona to help an ICU in Lancs Teaching Hospital, and we were competing with pillows that had been in the hospital for 30 years that stunk and were useless, but we have to demonstrate pressure relief, and that's all fine, but it wasn't apples for apples. So it was okay to position a patient that needed to be prone, needed to be on their stomach on some old bowl of porridge that they couldn't tolerate, but it wasn't okay till we did a load of ethics and got this data through, even though we knew that it was so much better. The prototype had the first patient on his stomach for 2 hours. He couldn't be on his stomach before the system we made.
Look, I think proving something in the NHS is or in a national hospital is going to be difficult, right? But as you mentioned, one thing that can show proof is sport, right? So because they're always looking to ways to increase performance. So you mentioned the cyclist. Is there anybody else you've seen, or sports specifically, just by changing their posture, that help their sleep?
We work with hundreds of athletes. We've worked with Paralympians, Olympians, professional Premier League footballers. We were at the England Rugby League World Cup camp, and again, so that was actually really interesting because we gave us the workshop, and we sort of said to the room, and rugby league lads are like, they've all had mega injuries, ridiculous injuries, and we're like, is anyone suffering from any sort of pain? Silence, because they all wanted to be picked for the squad.
Yeah.
No one had an injury. And then when we went to do one-on-one sessions, consultations, one guy had broken his neck whilst on the pitch,
Really?
but didn't mention that in the workshop. But yeah, we make a mockery of sport, really, in as much as at the Olympics, everyone who doesn't work with Levitex was sleeping on a cardboard bed on the same size pillow, whether they slept on their back or their side, whether they were a shot put male or a long distance female. One was 150 kilo, one was 50 kilo. How does that make sense? They weren't wearing the same anything else. This stuff works, and it's really transactional, and it works really quickly. And what we find is that the more noise we make in sport, think about it like when any major football club goes and plays a Champions League final, they will stay in a posh hotel. Like there's a specific hotel that they always stay in Manchester. They all stay in the same one hotel. They'll have their own room, maybe. Some like the better players might get the better suites. But did anyone ask them what they're sleeping on the night before the Champions League final, or the night before Wembley? And if we can't address things like hygiene because you're playing a late game and you've got an early start for training, or the adrenaline's running through after a night game, or we work with Lawrence Zicoli, the boxer, before he won his world title. He used to sleep on the floor because he had so much energy that he was so... he had this antenna, he just couldn't get comfortable because he was just wired, because he was about to, go to war. So you can't control things like that, right?
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think if we can make it in sport and it works in sport, it always seems to be the first kind of route to prove something.
Sport and military. We do a lot of work with injured soldiers, where, again, a lot of comfort, or the lack of consideration of comfort, is that it's an interface between something and the human. So let's consider, for example, prosthetics or exoskeleton. A prosthetic normally, and you'll know this much better than I, people call it like a meat slicer, that as you have that prosthetic leg on your knee, that over time it keeps slicing away because there's just no comfort between this big piece of metal and your knee bone. But to put something soft and comfortable, actually your leg would bend every time. So it's how do we make something that's comfortable and supportive, and that exists because we've made it. That's for sure. But in all these different fields, wherever you sit, wherever you stand, wherever you lie, you and I are happy slouching, being comfortable. I suspect we've both had bad posture in this call, but it doesn't matter because we're awake. So every time I become uncomfortable, I might move. You might have one elbow on the desk now, and then you might move away again. So that's okay. We're conscious. We're not conscious when we're sleeping in that sleep cycle. Your audience will already know because of all the hygiene stuff that in that deep sleep, you're essentially disabled. You are lying disabled, sedated, in a posture that you would never tolerate during the day for more than a minute. So your posture, or the way to identify whether your pillow's good or your mattress is any good, choose the current position that you fall asleep in the daytime, and see how long you can lay there not moving. So lie in that position, that one that you say is dead comfy. Pretend to be a dead weight, just let everything drop. See how long you last in that singular position. Because when we talk at universities, we always have, we do like physio sessions, we do lectures in physio and occupational therapy. And there's always a really cocky lad physio who's like, I can sleep whichever way I want. And we position them in a way not dissimilar to a presentation that I will have seen of a patient in a community setting or in a hospital setting. And it all seems lovely. And then you do like one little tweak of the hip, and then they know that they've been caught. And I offer them £50 if they can stay there for 45 minutes. Yeah. And within a minute, they're stood up. So that's the way. Just see if it's comfortable. Like, as in, not because you're knackered, but in the daytime.
I mean, like you said, so during the day we can move, like you said, right? But does bad posture at night relate to bad posture during the day? Because speaking personally, my posture is not great. And I've been tempted in the past, I have not now, but in the past, those devices where you almost put your shoulders pulling your back. First, what are your thoughts on them? And that's the first question. The second question is, does bad posture at night lead to bad posture during the day, or is it vice versa? Is there a link at all?
I think if I can separate the question slightly, I'd go like this. If when the great genii that discovered that posture was a thing way back when thought to promote it for bed rather than daytime, we'd all be much better off. So if we instead of getting an ergonomic chair from our bosses because we've got bad backs and we work in a big corporate, they sent us home with a mattress, we sleep twice as long as we work. So it'd be far more effective. I think for sure all posture becomes habit forming, and that's why I knew that you lay on your left side because of the way you crossed your legs. Before even, I've obviously not been to your house and seen you in bed. That would be weird. But you get the point, right? Yeah. So yes, there's definitely a relationship. In complex neurology, it's 24/7 posture. If you're really trying to do the absolute best, best in class support for a patient that's just had a catastrophic brain injury, then you're managing their posture 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of their lives, so that you avoid body shape deformity and contractures and just all those awful things that come when you don't look after a body shape. So yes, there's definitely a link. But I think what's more important to me is that I would care far less about whether you did yoga or not and whether you wore these strap things. And even if you had a good chair, than going to bed in a neutral posture. I think you'll probably get away with it much more being able to neglect your daytime posture, which you forget about, because, it's feel a bit uncomfortable. You don't consciously always think to move. You're awake, so you'll move a bit, you'll wriggle around. In sleep, there is a period of time when you are dead to the world. And if you can't avoid that, it doesn't matter what you do in the day, in my opinion. It's an opinion.
And so yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like I said, everything you're saying makes sense because it's just common sense, right?
Yeah, and you also don't load the spine. Sorry to interrupt you. Right. But I always like it. In my healthcare work, we always did the assessments with patients with either a physio, a neurophysio, or an occupational therapist, and it always felt, from an integrity perspective, that was right. I don't want to go looking like I'm trying to sell a sleep system to a patient that's vulnerable, that can't speak, or that mum and dad are trying to just feel better. So to have the sort of the approval of clinicians, you would agree that you don't load your spine in sleep. You only load it when you sat or you stood. So you're working your spine much harder in the day than you are at night. Agreed?
Agreed. I mean, this is speaking for anyone who's got kids. When did these habits start, and can we do this for kids?
I think that's exactly where they start. And what's so ironic is that we're kind of, as parents, we've been banned from stomach sleeping our children, right? So how did they get there? And then those people that got there I can guarantee you sleep on soft beds. Nobody that sleeps on their stomach sleeps on a hard bed. And if they do, it'll be 1% and they will definitely be under 30 years old. And they're not quite ready for the pain that's coming. But it will, and they'll come back and they'll say, you know what, you were right. So actually, don't let your kids sleep on the stomach. Doctors told you when you were pregnant, keep it that way. A child is you know, the work we do in hospitals, a lot of companies work with children with pediatrics.
Yep.
Because it's a kind of a different process. The child's developing, they're growing, but also there's a lot more funding for pediatrics. When you've had a stroke, there's far less funding, and it's very much a postcode lottery. But the movement of a human is one of the hardest things to carry. Is a deadweight person. It's so hard. So it has an impact not just on the person, but also the person caring. And I suppose that's why you've seen. I know we met through TikTok originally. The most the people that suffer the most are people who are looking after their husband or wife that's just had a stroke, that isn't getting any sleep, already has a job. 1 in 3 will be an NHS member of staff. Mm-hmm. They don't get any training. They're not like you. They're not a doctor. They haven't got any training. They didn't ask for the job. Mm-hmm. They get no time off. They get no holiday pay. And they're now looking after a really complex patient with very little support. Mm. And on top of all that, neither of them are sleeping and they're both in pain. Mm. So if a mother of a child, for example, we did a piece of work recently with an NHS choir called Sing Their Name. And it was a choir that was created by Suicide Prevention Services in Greater Manchester to support parents of children that had taken their own lives, and using the medium of this choir. Mm. And what we found out about parents that have had this horrific experience is that very often they sleep on couches. And so they all have chronic back pain. Mm. So in every level, in every part of society, we all sleep, we all have a spine. It could be a diagnosis of cancer. It could be, there's so many awful things going on. But irrelevant of that, and it's not to dismiss it or park it, I can't address it all. You know, you're a doctor. I'm sure you want to help the whole world, and you can't. But if you could address something that has an impact on sleep, pain, and mood that was free, like, where'd you sign, right? That's the deal. If that's what I'm offering you.
No, I agree. Like I said to you before, the reason I started all the social media stuff was because I think in one aspect, I think we over-medicate patients, and in particular things for sleep and pain.
Yeah.
And it's like a perfect storm, right? In the current healthcare system, because we've got 10 minutes, you've never seen the patient before, you're probably never going to see them again.
You don't know the context, you don't know the backstory, and like, you know, like with this choir that we met, like, I don't know I've got 4 children. God forbid anything like that was to curse my family. You know, I don't understand that, but I do understand that I don't wake up with neck pain. So even though last night's sleep was really bad because I've had a cold and I've driven 4 hours, whatever, it's not affected this one thing that I'm fully in control of. And if you are an insomniac, if you have fibromyalgia, it's so difficult when you're just being sent around the houses trying to find a solution. It's like, try that pill, like you say, or start going to the gym, start eating better. Sleep posture, actually, of all the interventions, you don't have to buy a smartwatch, you don't have to track anything. All you have to do is not lie like a sausage on your bed. That's it. That's your intervention. No yoga, no exercise, no great food. But if you don't wake up having had a decent night's sleep, if it's disturbed, if you wake up feeling tired, you're probably going to drink loads of coffee. You're definitely not going to the gym because everything hurts. Why would you go to the gym? And of course, you're starting off in a bad mood. So, as the kids start running around and forgetting their lunch, you're already shouting at kids. Your day's already started badly just because when you woke up, you felt stiff as a board because you fell asleep on your stomach last night.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, just to give an example, I've done orthopedics, and orthopedic patients have physio every day to recover from their operation. But it's just one of those things, like I mentioned, like food is horrific in hospitals. Now I understand why most patients sleep badly in hospital, not because of just the noise and how noisy it is, but also because of the mattresses, their sleep posture.
They're not comfortable.
Yes, and because of that, we have to medicate them so they can get through the physio session. So I think it's absolutely crazy. I mean, have you been invited to like universities or medical schools?
Yeah, I'm a guest lecturer at UCLan.
The reason I say that is because I think we need this one something that I think
honorary lecturer. Actually, sorry, I've done myself a disservice. They made me an honorary lecturer last year. It was really cool. There's no, well, you said it before, in physio, in occupational therapy, in nursing, in care, social care, as a doctor, not 1 hour of consideration of how you fall asleep and what you lie on. When it's this, like, as an occupational therapist, it's our number one occupation. So why is an occupational therapist not talking around the impact of sleep? Because they're not allowed. We have this burden of, I think, something like £2-3 billion a year on pressure injuries.
Yeah, and also they're notoriously difficult to treat, and obviously they can get very bad very quick, and
they're horrendous.
Yeah, and they often never heal. Like, they never fully heal. Like, often the patient goes home, if they're well enough, with oral antibiotics. Yeah. Inevitably, they're going to come back in outpatients with it getting worse.
The cost is insane, and the burden on, my grandmother's 97, and she had, it was a skin break. It wasn't a pressure sore, but it was a skin break from a procedure that she'd had. And it took over 1.5 years to heal. That was district nurse every week for 1.5 years. Yeah, it's solving the symptom. Pressure isn't the problem. I think what I learned, what's made me so passionate about this mission is pressure was never the problem. The problem was movement. If a person can't move, they're dead. It's as simple as that. And if you're lying on something that's difficult to move on, you're dead.
I want to talk to you about something. So obviously we met I reached out to you via TikTok because I saw your most viewed video, which has got 75 million views, which is nuts, right? But tell me about that, because that video is quite interesting, and you talk about it because
it's, we make all sorts of illustrations. One of the most effective imageries that we've got is actually of Katie the Olympian, where she used to the before and after.
Yeah.
And so that video is actually, I'm in quite a lot of trouble for that video. One of my best friends came to the office, and I'd found this meat suit on the internet, and I wanted to demonstrate what the body looked like, because you've got to visualize it to know, because it doesn't make sense, because people think they're going to sleep comfortable, but they're not. They're going to sleep tired in a familiar position. So you've already kind of got an argument. If it's comfortable, why is it a problem? Because when you woke up, you were in a lot of pain. So so we made this meat suit. He came on the bed, and I promised him it wouldn't go far.
Yeah.
It went 75 million views. We were in 40 countries' newspapers, the New York Post. We were everywhere. And so my friend is famous for not a very flattering image.
But that video was literally just you lying if I remember, on your stomach, right? Yeah. When your neck was all stretched.
Yeah. Just look at that picture and ask yourself if that contributes to your waking symptoms. And that's why I implore everyone who's on the live that says, that's on the watching this podcast or listening to the podcast, that says they are comfortable when they sleep on their stomach. See how long you can do it for awake. Just find a position that's comfortable. See how long you last there, because no one watches TV like that.
I'll try that. I'm convinced I can last more than a minute, but we'll see.
Yeah. Will you let me know, though? Let's do it. Make it a minute. Get your audience to do a minute challenge. I bet they don't make a minute.
Well, yeah, because it is super comfortable. But let's see. It's, but no, that video it wasn't the only one. All of the videos I've seen that are popular that are around that bad posture, because it shows how many people sleep like that, right? But not only that, things medically, things like acid reflux and, sleep apnea, all these conditions, in particular acid reflux, right? Like, sleep posture, acid reflux, just thinking about it now, it must be so important, because if you're lying on your stomach, that's just pushing in your stomach and your diaphragm, that's going to cause acid so have you seen many patients with acid reflux?
Sure.
I know we advise patients, prop a few pillows up,
Yeah, and this
but the problem with that is it gives them neck pain, right?
Correct.
And
it's solving symptoms of problems, not holistically. And like you say, you're so passionate about this holistic approach. I agree with you. So in hospitals, we'd always see patients propped up with the profiling beds.
Yeah.
And every hospital has a fourth button that no one uses. It tilts the whole mattress. So rather than turn somebody into a sandwich, tilt the whole thing. Then you have a head, if it's aspirations, the problem, if it's acid reflux, whatever it is, you've got a cold. We always think, have a bowl of chicken soup and 50 pillows and you'll feel better after a cold. Actually, like you say, I'm just compressing internal organs by squidging myself forward. So in all these situations, you can combine whatever it is that you need to support the patient. So it could be a pregnant woman has to be on her left side. A person with high blood pressure has to be on his right side. That's right, isn't it? Acid reflux, like you say, aspiration. Most of the patients we serve have to be 45 degrees head raised. But like I said, but where does that start? Because if you're halfway down the bed when you raise it, you're actually just really turning somebody into a crab, into a C shape. So it's so under-researched, so undervalued. But like you said, the beauty is that it's common sense. So if it makes sense that your mum in a care home doesn't look like a twisted pretzel and feels comfortable. You can tell the body knows the score. You don't need to be a doctor to know if your mum is in pain or not. If she looks, tense, then there's probably a reason for that.
What are your thoughts on? Now, I'm not going to say the company's name, but there's a few companies out there now. One in particular where they're selling very expensive beds or mattress toppers that essentially control temperature. So I think they respond to your body temperature and change the temperature of the mattress to an optimum temperature. But also, the beds can almost adjust, like almost a bit like hospital beds. So all of it can adjust. They're very expensive.
I've seen. I think people are shocked that we have a mid-level product that we think can do its job. There's a lot of engineer-led equipment that is very symmetrical, and the human body isn't symmetrical. So the same in a hospital bed or the same with a wheelchair. We're not all the same shape and size. Our knees don't marry. We always have a bit of a rotation. We have a dominant side, etc. I don't mind the companies that are coming out with at least some sort of data that says this is proven when it's even anecdotal, something, because some things you can't prove. You can't prove good posture. We'll never be able to prove the posture argument because you'd have to be born, have some device in your spine and watch a person from start to finish of life to really define. Correct, as a doctor, without that evidence, you could never categorically claim that even to sit properly is important. But yet, we universally know that it is. So I think it's the same here. I think if they can prove, like the technology around cooling, particularly if it's not dynamic, so if it's like a foam that says it's got cooling technology in, the only test that you can do at a test house is called an enthalpy test, where you touch it and it feels cool. That doesn't account for lying on something for 8 hours. So any lying surface, any contact surface is going to absorb some heat, and there's going to be a space of air between you and that surface. So, lying on your back, you're going to be hotter than lying on your side, for example, and lying on your stomach. That's a common sense approach to reducing heat in bed. Thinner duvet, but also to be comfortable. Because if you're tossing into, there's people on our channel that call themselves rotisserie chickens. It's one of my favourite. What position do you sleep in? I'm a rotisserie chicken. Because you're uncomfortable. That's the only reason. But if you're moving through the night, if you're tossing and turning through the night, if you're going through the menopause, we're doing quite lots of work with women going through the menopause in the NHS. Hot flushes and night sweats are linked to sleep apnea, and there's emerging research about that now. Well, if we're meant to sleep on our side for sleep apnea, then let's kill two birds with one stone. It will not stop the menopausal symptoms, right? And I think that what's appealing to people, like you said about the videos being so popular, is we're not dismissing your cause of poor sleep, because it could be anything from some god-awful mental health crisis all the way through to, you've got ADHD or whatever the thing is. And I'm no doctor, and it would be very difficult to access everybody. But this is a universal intervention. I'm very confident of that, and we're proving it.
So how can we, for example, for someone like sleep apnea, you can give them a patient a sleep device and see if there's such drop. And then you can see after CPAP, okay, look, their results are improving. So, but with something like sleep posture, what is the measurement outcome? Is it just the patient's symptoms? Are they feeling better? Or
you
could just say, okay, one day, look, so I want you to sleep like this, or try this. So, for example, sleep on a slightly firmer mattress, on a slightly firmer pillow, pillow between your knees and your ankles.
Very transactional.
And just see where
Did you wake up less? Did you feel better or worse in the morning? Would you mark your pain out of 10? I don't think it needs to be any more complicated than that, because actually we don't really. It's all perceived.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, sleep apnea was probably a bit of a bad example because it's hard.
Well, no, actually, I think it's a great example. I'll tell you what. I met a 26-year-old 2 weeks ago that's been diagnosed with sleep apnea. A lady.
I think it's massively underdiagnosed, by the way. But
it's massively underdiagnosed. But listen to this for the opposite end of the spectrum. So she was sent the machine. How many days are you meant to use the machine?
It varies. It can be 1 day, 3 days, or a week.
Right. Well, she was given it for a day. She was big chested, and because of the way the machine works, it has to be stuck onto your chest. So every time she lay on her side, which is her preferred position, it fell off. So they told her to lie on her back.
Because the reading was saying
So if you're lying on your back, do you think you're going to get better or worse results?
It's going to be worse. Steve, that's a worse.
So she's been diagnosed with sleep apnea at 26, having not really had a proper test, all done virtually. And now she's dealing with, from my perspective, I would want you to lie on your side regardless than you know what she was doing. But the fact that that was the test, and the advice, you know what the advice was that she was given by her clinician? Put a tennis ball in your pajamas on your back so that you don't fall onto your back. That is as sophisticated in 2024 as we've got. And sleep apnea, like you say, is heavily underdiagnosed, is a huge problem. No one's catching it. And our best work is, get a tennis ball.
Yeah, no, I think sleep apnea is crazy because I think it reduces your life expectancy by 10 to 15 years. And it gets underdiagnosed because I think the screening process, there's a questionnaire that GPs use, it's called a sleepiness scale. And that's not meant to be for screening of sleep apnea, but it is.
Because that's the only screen, the Epworth one.
Epworth, yeah. So, but that's not meant to be, that's just a sleepiness scale, right? It's not meant to be used as a screening tool for sleep apnea. And also, sleep apnea, if you sleep alone, you're never really going to know. Like most of the time, it's a partner because you're snoring or grunting and say, look, you should probably go to a doctor because it looks like you're choking in the middle of your night, right? In the middle of your sleep, sorry. But yeah, so I think posture is massively important, not just in everyday people who are healthy, but also in, medical conditions. Have you seen? And what about? What can you tell about arthritis? Have you within your company? Have you seen the results? Just from changing posture, things like arthritis and fibromyalgia in particular.
100%. Well, my medical director is actually a leading consultant for chronic pain and specialises in fibromyalgia. So when we started the project, it was very important to have. We always use multidisciplinary approach. We always try and collaborate with academics and clinicians because I'm not one. And it's a case of marrying industry and healthcare and academia so that actually providing something that legitimately works. And absolutely, if, the people that complain are always people that are starting the beginnings of arthritis or suffering with fibromyalgia. And actually, if the structures around the bones, the muscles, the joints are having to hold a position for a long period of time and or be engaged through the night because what's underneath you doesn't give you the support, it's like the opposite of what you should be doing. You'll always feel worse in the morning. The easiest way to talk about sleep posture or to evidence whether or not it does its thing is how did you feel this morning? Address it tonight. Give it a week. You've got nothing to lose because most people sleep really poorly or wake up in pain. I think the other thing about comfort, what I've noticed is people get really anxious about changing because they get so little sleep already. They can only sleep in that position and they feel like if I don't go to sleep in that position, I won't get even the 3 hours that I need or that I used to get. But actually, if you're waking up in pain and you feel crap every morning, then you need to address it.
You know what really helped me, actually, it's actually more comfortable, is when you said put the pillow between your knees and your ankles. Like for me, that was actually really comfortable. Like, it made a big difference. And actually, since we spoke, I was speaking to my wife, my mum, my dad and my sisters, and I think everyone's got, it was crazy, it was just a very small sample size, obviously, but 100% of that sample size had bad sleep posture, and it literally was...
That's 3 generations.
Was just sleeping on a side, right?
Yeah. You all slept in the same way.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me to say, I think this is something that we should be asking patients every conversation. It should be like, in medical, we're taught to do a history, right? Presenting a complaint, history of that complaint, and then we do a general kind of questionnaire. And one thing we never taught is how, when we might ask how you're sleeping, but not specifically, what's your posture, how do you fall asleep? And I think that's key, in particular in chronic pain patients. So that's something I'd definitely be adding actually to my history.
It's vital. It's absolutely vital. You're going to get a shock. But I love working with clinicians because it's so, like you say, it's common sense.
Yeah.
And where, there's no ego involved. I didn't do your work as a doctor. I didn't even start. You started this journey to help people. I've learned to come to this through my journey, my own personal journey, but it's not considered. It's frightening. When you start addressing sleep posture with your patients, particularly the chronic painers, you're going to get a shock. A good shock. It's not a bad thing. We only know what we know. The earth used to be flat.
Yeah, no, I'm actually looking forward to it to see. I actually want to start, doing this as an intervention for patients along with the other things, because it's kind of like once they've reached a level of sleep hygiene, it's almost like also doctors are almost a bit like, they're probably not, they probably are watching TV at night, or they're probably, doing something.
You're not going to change that. That's the point.
No, but a lot of the time, the patients generally have tried everything. And I think the next, or probably the first step, should be asking about, okay, how are you sleeping? Are you doing all these things?
Are you comfortable? Just it's so simple. Have you ever had a pressure injury, love? No. Are you sleeping all right? Are you in pain? Are you tense? Is it? How many hours did you get? Why? How old's your bed? What is your bed? If it's the thing we do the most, you have, like you just said before, you used in sleep apnea as an Epworth scale, the sleepiness scale, that wasn't designed as a tool for sleep apnea. But as a doctor, you've got nothing else. Is that not crazy?
Yeah, I think sleep apnea is one of those things that I had an ENT consultant on here a few weeks ago. That's actually quite easy to diagnose if you just tell the patient to do a test. But a lot of time we're doing a questionnaire as a screening tool, and if they don't score highly on that, they don't get offered a referral or whatever, which is wrong, right? It just and then that scale just tells you if you're sleeping or not. That could be down to so many different things.
It's very reactive. It's a very reactive approach.
Yeah,
it's the same as actually what we've. I think the reason why I became a bit obsessed was because I've seen young children with upside down feet. I've seen the most repugnant body shape deformity that the person had to get to that position. They didn't just get twisted over a really long period of time. Somebody was rotting into a god-awful position, and we were only ever invited to see them once they could no longer be seated, or personal care became impossible because their legs were crossed. At what point, like, why weren't we invited 10 years earlier? Because no one really thinks that this is important yet. That it's coming. For sure, it's coming quick.
Have you got any data on what happens in patients who've got long-term bad sleep posture? I mean, it's hard to say, but what are the potential outcomes of that? Could that increase arthritis rates?
We think it's much better to address it as what to avoid rather than the perfect night's sleep, because there's so many external factors. So one of the things I wanted to say when you were talking before about you're going to now use it in your consultations is it can't be that every time you bring this up with one of your patients, the only solution is to speak to James Leinhart at Levitex, right? I mean, that'd be very nice, but I'd also be a cartel.
Yeah.
Sleep posture is not universal to me. It's not exclusive to me. Everybody can improve their sleep posture tonight without buying anything, with whatever they've bought already. Just making themselves more neutral than they were yesterday will have an impact.
All right, so tonight, the listeners, what can they do to sleep better posture-wise?
If you are currently a side sleeper or a stomach sleeper, these have been identified as the provocative postures where both knees are on the bed. So I implore you to try for 30 minutes a night, and after that, go back to your old ways, lying on your side with a pillow, any old supermarket pillow, something to de-weight that top leg. If you find that that's not quite right, hug a pillow as well to stop you rolling over, and try to alternate the side that you fall asleep on. When we ask people what side they sleep, they say, I sleep in all different positions. I'm talking about the last conscious moment just before you pass out, that zonk out moment. What's that? Because you immediately identified it as left side, right? I want you to learn to be able to lie on your left and your right. I want you to be able to cross your left leg over your right leg as easily as your right leg over your left.
Okay.
It's just symmetry, as best as you can manage it, because in the daytime, we all slump. It's more comfortable. This is more comfortable to slump than this. Agreed? We both feel more comfortable, but we both know it's bad for us. At night time, you're not tense, your muscles are not, your spine is not loaded, your body weight distribution is more even, there's less peak pressure, there's less movement, and you're sedated. It's like the perfect time to do this.
Interesting. Okay. And this kind of leads on to it. What are your top 3 tips? I know you've just covered.
Well, that was sideline. I suppose you should tell back sleepers as well, because we're avoiding stomach, right?
Yeah, stomach's a no-go. So, okay, fine. Back sleepers, what should they do?
So if you were to stand against the wall, you would see that there's an arch between, like, around the middle of your back, and then it comes into a bottom. So you've got that S shape.
Yeah.
So that space exists when you're lying on your back. The best way to deal with that, because that space is gravity's magic, able to pull that body down into the hole, right? So stick a pillow underneath your knees and it slightly tilts your pelvis, so you don't look dissimilar to this seated posture. Your legs are a bit straighter, but by bending the knee slightly and tilting the pelvis, you'll find that the back feels straighter, less pressure on the tailbone, and less tension everywhere. You just might feel more comfortable. So try that. I think what's really important that really everyone should try and address is if they're sinking in the middle of their beds.
Yeah, that's a big one for me.
Yeah, because you don't have to buy a new mattress, but understand that you bend and pivot at the hips and the pelvis, and your body weight pulled down by gravity means that if you're lying on something soft, it will become a hammock. So the idea is to bring you up to the bed. If your hips sinking in, lie on your side with a pillow between your somewhere around your trunk to bring the trunk back up. Like we've both agreed, posture is around a nice, neutral, as symmetrical as possible position where the body doesn't have to do very much to be in it. Agreed? Dead easy.
Perfect. Look, I think we've covered a lot there, and I think that, this is, like I said, it's changed my view on sleep, and it's just because, sometimes I'm always a bit of a loss, okay, I genuinely believe there's patients doing everything they can, but now there's one more step. So thank you so much. But you do sleep consults, right? How can, if someone wants to have a sleep consult, how can they find you? Yeah,
we're all over. They'll find us on levitex.co.uk. We have a section there around consultations, and then the medical side of my business is always with the NHS or local authority. So OTs and physios will contact us directly, and we'll do joint assessments for patients that are bedbound, immobile, and for all intents and purposes, vulnerable adults generally.
Correct. Just one more question before we go. I just thought of it. What do you think the future is in this area? Do you think it will progress into more of a mainstream aspect of medicine?
Definitely. Well, that's if it doesn't, I don't see any better way of addressing. So in the NHS, for example, where you worked, the two main referrals from the staff are musculoskeletal pain and sleep disruption. So in every facet of planet Earth, this is an intervention that is so effective. We're doing some work with a new university, which I can't mention yet because it's very close, but what we've identified is how under-researched nighttime posture is. And you know that yourself, you're a doctor. There are so many things that have so much more research attributed to them. And sleep's, I think I saw one of the sleep scientists before, the single most effective thing to stop death is sleep, right? That was the claim. But yet in medicine, we're not making that our absolute priority.
No, I agree. I think there's been a lot about it, but sleep posture is one that's not so far become mainstream. But I think the work you're doing is amazing. I think we'll get there eventually. But
I love, by the way, that you've even you have brought it to your family. That was always the thing.
Because they're always saying, look, as a family, they're always asking, like, you're a doctor, come on, I can't sleep. What is it? And I'm always like, are you watching TV? All this stuff. And they're always like, I'm doing that. Is this anything else apart from medication? And then I came to them with this. They were like, okay, look, this is something you can actually try.
But isn't it brilliant that it worked with all three?
Yeah.
And only you, it's like, I know you've got my pillow now, so of course I know you're going to be sleeping well, but you were able to share a very commonsensical approach that didn't require clinical talk, and both an older person and a peer were able to absorb that information, take it, use it transactionally, free of charge. So I do hope that more people like you are screaming, because you've seen it works.
And also they kind of understood it, because it was like we've always been saying the whole lot of time, it's just common sense, and they were like, and something they could try. So thanks for fixing my sleep and my family's sleep. I'm sure they'll watch this, and thank you. But thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here. Truly, what you're doing is amazing.
All right. Well, thank you.